Carly and I decided to discuss Marjane Satrapi today. Marjane Satrapi was born in 1969 in Rasht, Iran, but she was raised in Tehran. She was the only child to two avant-garde parents, and they both supported Marxist ideals and the Iranian Revolution. After the revolution in 1979, the Shah was overthrown, but Muslim extremists took over the government, and so Satrapi's family's decadent way of life suddenly became unacceptable in the eyes of the government. Her rebellious spirit then caused her parents to send her to study abroad in Vienna when she was 14. They did this for her safety as well as her education. But she struggled in Europe. She got involved with drugs, she suffered several bad relationships, and she actually ended up living homeless for a time. She returned to Iran when she was 19 and ended up getting married, but the marriage only lasted for 2 years before ending in divorce. She permanently moved to Europe in 1993 and now lives in France. We decided to add Satrapi to our English studies syllabus because she adds diversity to the course, and being a woman as well as a Middle Eastern author, and she presents a different perspective of social issues affecting society today.
Marjane Satrapi's literary career involves her work as a graphic novelist, cartoonist, illustrator, film director, and children's book author. Her career began when she met a French comics artist, David Boucard, who became her teacher. With the set of skills she learned from Boucard, Marjane began writing an autobiographical graphic novel, Persepolis. These novels, Persepolis and Persepolis II, described her life growing up in Iran, her adolescence in Europe, and her early adulthood. She also wrote Embroideries, a graphic novel about the sex lives of Iranian women, such as her mother, her grandmother, her aunts, and other relations, and her neighbors. Another book she wrote was Chicken with Plums, another graphic novel that follows the life of an Iranian musician who falls into depression after the destruction of his favorite instrument. Lastly, she contributed much to the op-ed section of the New York Times. Persepolis and Persepolis II were made into a film, and Marjane made sure to be hands-on in every part of the process. Some of her other works in English include the graphic novels Monsters Are Afraid of the Moon, The Sigh, and her films Chicken with Plums, Gang of the Hotas, and The Voices. For this presentation, we will focus on the complete Persepolis because of its popularity and its reference to Persia's history in connection to present dilemmas. Persepolis is actually the name of a World Heritage Site created in 515 BC, located in Shiraz, Iran. It was the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire and references Persia's long and complicated history.
Satrapi writes her works in French, and then they are translated into different languages around the world. According to Penguin Random House Publishing, Persepolis is a New York Times notable book, a Times Magazine Best Comics of the Year book, and a San Francisco Chronicle and Los Angeles Times bestseller. The movie version of Persepolis was actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. I found a glowing review of Persepolis written in the New York Times in 2003 by Fernanda Eberstadt. Eberstadt says the book is the latest and one of the most delectable examples of a booming postmodern genre, autobiography by comic book. The book also has a 4.5 out of 5-star rating on Amazon.com, so critics and the public both received Satrapi's work well. There are certainly connections between Satrapi's work and her experiences growing up. As I mentioned in the bio intro, she lived in revolutionary Iran, and so her work is certainly influenced by those experiences and the things she witnessed growing up. She deals with concerns such as Iranians that are unfairly ruled, government that places unqualified people in power, women and youth that are limited by the government. She also deals with issues such as coming of age, politics, war, freedom, family, religion, and the differing Eastern and Western cultures.
While Marjane's childhood was very socially open, by the time she was growing up there was a huge divide between genders. Suddenly there were restrictions on social gatherings, youthful wildness, and other social events, making a great divide between men and women. Marjane slowly became socially and culturally restricted. Marjane's family was very close, partially due to the upheaval in the government and these restrictions in society. These restrictions forced the family to become even more tight-knit in order to survive. The oppression of her family's beliefs, the execution of her uncle, the restrictions to her creative outlet, education, and future career all resulted in Marjane's strong negative feelings towards the government and society around her. Her experience being oppressed by her government resulted in the creation of this novel and her challenging of Iranian social norms.
The only really negative critical receptions that this writer faced is that she uses an unfamiliar style and form. Comics kind of carry a negative connotation, and graphic novels aren't much better. Many people view them as childish, but this simple form gets her message across more easily, especially when her novels are translated and presented in to an unfamiliar Western audience. She uses very simplistic messages to get her themes across, but her communication is amplified by her use of both words in language and pictures as well. She also keeps her illustrations very simple, much like her language. They are all done in black and white, and she uses very bold and blunt drawing style as well as writing style. I see this as her way of telling her story honestly, frankly, and with minimal embellishments, to expose the truth as she saw it. She strips her story down to the bare bones with her style, and she also utilizes gallows humor throughout her comics and meshes a memoir and a graphic novel into one. Her work is absolutely still relevant today. Persepolis was actually published pre-9/11, and I would argue that even then there was a fear and misunderstanding surrounding Middle Eastern culture. So I think post-9/11 this text becomes even more important, because that same fear and lack of understanding amplified into hatred in many cases. Considering this, Satrapi's work is even more important to be read today, because she writes personal narratives that allow for deep and emotional insights into a culture many of us don't know a whole lot about. Her discussion of differing societal and cultural values was prevalent in her own life and time, and it still is today.
Marjane should be a significant figure in English studies because she diversifies the current material and broadens students' views to encompass areas outside of the United States. Marjane's work opens discussions about child soldiers, immigration issues, hatred towards Iranians, misunderstood cultures, and the importance of history in regards to present situations. Overall, Marjane shows that there are always ways to get around tyranny and that there is importance in women's untold stories.